Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast, where we talk with early-stage entrepreneurs to understand what information they use to inform product roadmap, strategy, and market differentiation.
Welcome to the podcast. Today we have Jason Fordham, who's one of the co-founders and CEO of Perfit, and Casey Reagan, who's the COO and co-founder of Perfit. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely appreciate it.
All right, let's start off with a quick pitch for Perfit. What is Perfit? What do you guys do?
Perfit is a customer engagement platform that is really changing the way people shop in stores. So the main goal of Perfit is really to bring the ease of digital shopping to brick and mortar. Retail focused, but we are highly sensitive to the customer experience in the retail store. And so we've built a platform that focuses on driving a better customer experience that is more akin to the digital shopping experience, specifically in retail, fashion, and apparel stores.
So what does that actually look like? If I'm a customer at, I don't even know where I shop, Eddie Bauer. So if I'm a customer at Eddie Bauer, what does that actually look like for me? How do I interact with your product?
The main purpose of this is to create a customer-driven experience. So when the customer enters the store, usually they are shopping around you or just shopping around, browsing throughout the products. And often if it is a fashion and apparel store, you are there so that you can feel what a product feels like, what it looks like, and more importantly, how does it fit on your body? And so that's why the fitting room is quintessential to the customer experience inside of fashion and apparel retailers. For example, 87% of people who go to a fashion and apparel retailer are there to try on clothing. And so that is why we have started with that in mind, as it's the very central point for Perfit, is to improve the customer experience starting with the fitting room.
But what does that actually look like? Is there an app on my phone that I'm pulling out when I get into the store? Is there something in the fitting room? Like what am I doing to interact with you guys?
The year is 2019, and at this point, everyone has expected that when they enter a fitting room, there is some form of a digital display, whether that be a smart mirror or more appropriately, a device, almost a tablet hanging on a wall, sitting right there that shows the products that you have in there, recommendations for what other corresponding products will go along with that. Give me product information, give me sizing options, give me color options. Basically, all the information that you are used to seeing on your phone or on your desktop. When you're sitting there in the changing room, the last thing you can do is have a hand holding a phone trying to circle through what other options you have, simply because you're trying to put on clothing. So that's why there is a device that is hands-free with product information sitting right there. And really, this is where the customer-driven experience begins, is by being able to interact with the device hanging on the wall that then also gives you the ability to, most importantly, request a different item. So perhaps one of the recommendations that's sitting there, or often in my case, I get the wrong size, and my options are to yell over the wall to whoever I'm shopping with, if I'm shopping with someone, to grab something for me, to get redressed into the other clothes that I wore in, or probably the worst option is to walk out in the clothes that I'm currently dressed in, leaving my phone, my wallet, and everything sitting in the fitting room. Those are your three options at the current moment. So we have designed a system, a platform, that allows you to make requests, and those requests go to the associates who are in the store and are then armed with an app that is downloadable from the iOS store or the Google Play Store that allows them to receive these requests, such as Fitting Room 3 is looking for a size 32 jean in this particular style, this particular color. That request goes out to all the associates currently logged into their app, and they can say, I'm on it, I'm claiming it, which then provides the feedback directly to the device in the room and says, Casey is on it, and Casey will bring you the item. So we're trying to simplify that process, which in fact causes 51% of people to leave a fitting room without purchasing or without the intent to purchase because they cannot find the right size, style, or color that they're looking for in the store.
How does the device know what items I've brought into the fitting room with me?
The experience starts when you arrive at the store, you go to try things on. There's a barcode scanner in the room.
Okay.
And the device that the associate has also has a scanner in it. So depending on the experience that the store wants to present and how they want to manage the actual rooms or the fitting experience there, either the associate can scan those items or the shopper can scan them, and then they show up on the display, everything that gets scanned in.
Got it. Is that scanner a camera? Is that scanner infrared? What is that?
It's a standard infrared scanner. No cameras are on our device in the room. We've seen other technologies that present like 3D views and all this of people in the fitting room, and we're not going for that kind of experience. We're trying to make this a very comfortable experience, a very easy experience for shoppers. So that was one of our first rules out of the gate, is there will not be a camera on any of the devices that are in the rooms.
When you are selling to a retailer, are you guys providing those in-room devices along with the software, or are they providing their own devices as part of an implementation?
For the associate themselves, as Jason mentioned, the application can be downloaded to their device. So if they have, short-term associates for seasonal help or people who only work, various days, they can come in emergencies. They can quickly download the application and be up and running. The device that's in the room, we are having a partner that's going to help us with the hardware side of that. So that is provided as part of the solution, but it's not part of our core business.
Got it. So current status of the business, where are you guys at? Any vanity metrics you can share? Funds raised, revenue, customers, anything at all, that number of fittings that have happened, anything that kind of tells somebody where you're at?
Up to this point, we have bootstrapped the business in order to get the product developed. So we've gone through a pretty intensive product development phase with getting retailer feedback, prospect feedback along the way, and have gotten to our initial product release for the fitting room device, the interactive touchscreen, I should say, in the fitting room. The associate downloadable app are both fully complete. We've even built an MVP version of the additional portion of our business that we have yet to mention, which is the consumer app that allows them to interact with their device, with their fitting room once they've left the store, and then continue the experience. So we even have an MVP version of that. So the product development for the initial phase is complete. We are in the process of approaching prospects. We're engaged in several active conversations to deliver our first pilot customer. So that is our primary focus at the current moment, is the business development aspect in a very targeted prospect conversations. We are now starting the process of moving outside of bootstrapping and looking to raise an initial round of funding. So we've had several conversations moving in, even getting a few soft commits along the way. I'm certainly not going to divulge any of that information, but we have some soft commits along the way, but we're actively engaging with some initial institutional round discussions, as well as some key angel and individual investors for a seed round.
Nice. So when you think of that first customer, well, maybe not. I mean, I guess I'm guessing for a beta, you'll take any customers you can get, because that's how betas work. But when you think of your target customer, maybe let's go there instead, right? Like, are you guys envisioning, and like any product, right, you want to take over the world and go after everybody, but out of the gate, are you more focused on your so I think of like your big box Targets and Walmarts, which all have fitting rooms, versus your J. Crew, Abercrombie and Fitch, something you'd see more in a mall, versus like when you think of that customer, who are they? What demographic are they serving? Like, how do you guys figure out who's going to be the best retailer for you to approach today?
Yeah, we're looking for customers that have multiple stores, at least 3 stores, and multiple fitting rooms per store. So not necessarily initially like your boutique retailer, where they've already got a very personal one-on-one experience with the shopper. We're looking for retailers that have a little bit more scale than that. Places where fit is obviously important is sort of our initial target.
It's really easy to identify one major problem that we are attempting to solve here, which is the number of customers versus the number of associates at key traffic times. So a boutique usually has a pretty one-to-one relationship between the customer and then the associate in the store, or even in this case, frequently the store owner.
Right.
We still add value in those circumstances, but it's not our target market. Our target market is much more along the lines which you're discussing, the American Eagles of the world, the Gaps, the Abercrombie and Fitches, found within malls usually, not always. Old Navy is obviously another example of that, but where you have a higher ratio, 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 10-to-1 in some cases, of customer to associate at these key points. Frequently in those situations, you have two major problems. No one can service the customer, so you're creating a negative customer experience with them. And two, you have a set number of fitting rooms. Often we see 10 fitting rooms in most of these stores. If you expand beyond that for these target stores, but they have 10 fitting rooms and they have 25 customers wanting to get in to try something on. The line that you create right there is a key challenge, and often it's really derived from a lack of customer service or a lack of availability for someone to deliver the right item. So by creating these key efficiencies in the fitting room, streamlining the process, speeding up the process, you're going to have higher turnover in the fitting room and create higher conversions as well. So we are looking for those from an initial launch that meet really that standard. The ideal will have roughly more than 100 stores and 10 fitting rooms. We're not looking for that for our initial pilot. Trying to create that scale is going to be a little bit more challenging for an initial launch, but trying to get into 2 or 3 stores and a few of the fitting rooms in those examples would be an ideal pilot launch.
How did you guys land on Perfit as a concept? Like, I'm fascinated by the origin story here and how you guys came to this product. Can you share a little bit of that?
Jason has a great story for this.
So this goes 18 months back, actually.
Because I'm not saying you guys aren't the most fashion forward gentlemen I've ever seen here, but I mean, you're kind of dressing like I would dress, flannel and.
Well, like I say, we're a little dressed for the weather today as well. But
I've departed from my roots of winning Best Dressed in high school, I believe, but that had nothing to do with this.
Did you actually win?
I did actually win Best Dressed.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Okay. This is a potentially edible part.
No,
hold on. What I'm about to say.
Okay.
I went to an all-male high school and won Best Dressed.
Fantastic.
So for your purposes, I thought you'd appreciate it. But I did. I could even submit the yearbook if you want to attach that as a post.
I'm good. All right. Sorry. Didn't mean to distract you.
So this goes back 18 months where we really found this idea came to fruition. And it happened right here in downtown Indianapolis. In fact, I was with my wife in between the ceremony of a coworker's daughter's wedding and the reception. So there was a couple hour delay. I live 20 minutes, 30 minutes from downtown. We had a babysitter for our kids. You don't get much better than that in these circumstances. So during that day, we thought, well, what are we going to do while we're waiting to go to the reception? My wife said, hey, sure, let's go to the mall. We'll go to Circle Center and we'll just look around. I had no particular intentions. We weren't one of the 87% that was looking to try anything on. In fact, we were dressed up. So that seemed really a far cry from what we would end up doing. But we found ourselves in an American Eagle down in Circle Center. And my wife had just grabbed a few things. I think we actually had 3 or 4 hours. So there was plenty of time to try something on. So we go into there. She goes in the fitting room. I'm standing outside as I normally do in that circumstance on my phone. After a couple minutes, the obligatory, hey, Jason, will you grab me this and this size? I obviously can't remember what she was looking for. I think it was jeans at the time. But it was, can you grab me this and this size, this and this size, this and this size? And then clearly the 2009 Apple commercial stuck in my mind. Like, there's got to be an app for this because I cannot just record this at the moment while I'm trying to read probably ESPN at that point. Trying to read ESPN and capture what she's yelling over the wall at me from 3 fitting rooms from where I'm standing. So I get everything, I hand it to her. But as I'm doing this, I'm again thinking there's got to be a better way. And the first thing that comes to mind is, it's 2017. Where is the device in the fitting room that I heard about 10 years ago? We should have these by now. And so that just started to formulate this idea. And after a couple of days speaking with Casey, speaking with one of the other co-founders, Jamal, we really started to formulate okay, what would be the value proposition outside of simply having a device in the fitting room that lets you request? And there are some really key features that we landed on that are going to improve the customer experience, largely because we see a base customer experience can drive the term is a moderate improvement in customer experience can drive 25% higher profits for a retailer. So how do we improve that customer experience? And this is where we started to say, well, obviously you got to be able to get things to the shopper so the associates can be more efficient in that. We've got to be able to give product recommendations because those drive 10% increase in sales and online. What if you could actually try something on sitting in the fitting room? So that one experience of my wife standing in the fitting room yelling over the wall at me led to the base concept that I then spent the remainder of the wedding formulating in my mind, thinking, okay, how could we do this? Again, talking about it with Casey, talking about it with one of the other co-founders, Jamal, and we came up with the base feature set that is now available within the Perfit platform.
All right, let's get into competition. When you guys step back and look at this space and the companies that you're competing with right now, who are the closest competitors? Who comes to mind?
I don't know if we never necessarily want to name all the competitors out there. There's a number of different solutions that people are trying in the fitting room. We've seen everything from a button on a wall that lights up a light that nobody's looking at.
That's old school.
We've seen the 3D cameras. There's actually a lingerie company that has this on their site that this is their proprietary technology. You can go into a fitting room and there's a 360-degree camera that will measure you for your bra. It's like, what woman wants to do this, first of all? And then where's the data going for it, that's being captured from this? It's kind of a scary prospect, the type of things that we're seeing. Coffee in the fitting rooms. Again, they're trying to change this experience. I saw one yesterday, too, where you go into the store and the first thing that they want you to do is pick up a red basket or a black basket to say, do you want help from an associate or not? So you pick up the black basket and you don't want help. Then you decide later you need help. Are you supposed to go switch the basket? There's all kinds of crazy ideas people are trying. And so, we feel like this kind of a basic solution of what people are used to on a web platform to where they can easily request what they want is really what, is going to drive the market here. I think everybody recognizes that something needs to be done with the fitting room. It's very outdated in what's happening today. And we feel like this is the solution for it.
Let me jump in there as well. There is a very large focus that's come about over the last 2 to 3 years on improving the customer service or the customer experience inside the brick and mortar stores. So there's already been a lot of investment that's started to go on, I'd say there's a lot of development that's started to go on. I'm going to look at Tulip Retail to actually name a company. They focus on putting the experience in the hands of the associate. So they work with a lot of products, different products that provide a tablet or an iPad that someone can therefore look on while they're working directly with an associate. A valuable experience, and we know those guys from our past lives. They've done very well with their application. The problem is it's associate driven, not customer driven, and that's really one of the major changes that needs to happen. Ralph Lauren actually partnered with one of eBay's services group to build out this experience. They didn't do it in such a way that it was scalable. I mean, they were spending $4,000+ per fitting room to do this. And if you're a store like American Eagle, you have about 11,000 fitting rooms, which You can do the math real quickly of why that's not a scalable solution. We've seen a lot of those. Smart mirrors had their heyday about 4 or 5 years ago. But I think what most people missed on the smart mirrors, while it's a cool looking technology, you're actively negatively impacting why someone walks into that fitting room, which is they want to see themselves in a mirror. So when you're putting your handprints and somebody else's handprints all over this mirror to click on, I want to see other items that look like this, you're defeating the primary purpose of the fitting room. And so we've seen companies like that kind of come and go. The only other ones that there's a couple, I'll name one more key on, is actually they're on our competitive landscape because they are security tagging in RFID tagging all clothing. So that's great if you want to know who's carrying what around in the stores, but the build out cost to be able to drop that in everywhere is extremely high. And it still doesn't solve the other problem of having the responsive interactivity. So that's really where we see most of the competitive space right now is focusing on devices in the associates' hands, RFID. It's not a simple customer-driven solution. There's a couple that are starting to come up, but most of them have been more early stages pilot tests.
So when I listen to you guys talk through that landscape, it sounds like there's not, outside of smart mirrors in particular, it sounds like there's not a lot of technology getting dropped into fitting rooms at scale. So when you're going out and talking to retailers, how much of that is like just general resistance to adopting new technology versus displacing something that they might already be piloting or doing today? I guess I'm a little curious, just if you guys can riff on it a little bit in that sales cycle, those first conversations, how much of that is like, educating them versus on the opportunity and what you can do from a customer experience perspective versus just getting them into this idea that this is even a place for investment versus, I'd love to hear what some of those conversations have been like.
Yeah, there's definitely been a trend over the last, several years where retailers have been more focused on online technology, but I definitely see that as starting to shift, and we're, having good conversations with retailers. As I mentioned before, there's been a lot of tests and trials with different technologies. So there's not a fear of implementing technology in the brick and mortar environment. I think it's just a matter of finding the right solution that fits for them. And, again, this shift back to how can we improve the brick and mortar experience. We've kind of, again, over the past several years, improved the online experience a lot and gotten to a really good point with it. And retailers are seeing that they need to start putting some dollars back in, especially as they downscale the number of associates that are in stores and trying to keep up that customer experience.
Mostly during the sales process, it's not an education of why the customer experience needs to be improved. They know that.
Okay.
And they know that the in-store experience still needs to be improved. There's always this conversation of the retail apocalypse or the death of retail. Retail, and more specifically brick and mortar, still makes up over 80+%. Some studies say 90% of sales are still occurring in stores.
And do you know what percent of that is that? So I'm assuming that stat is overall retail, right? So that's everything from Band-Aids to fashion.
Absolutely.
Do you know what those numbers are for fashion?
Yes, 83%. So it's 17% of sales are occurring online, which that's great. It's growing at 10% a year. So some quick math tells you something. Fashion and apparel is growing at roughly 3% per year for the entire industry. And I'll put this benchmark out there. It's roughly a $3 trillion industry for fashion and apparel worldwide. US alone, it's around $350 to $400 billion annually. Of that, you're getting 80+% occurring in stores still to this day. And it's a very, very large prospect. It's great that online is growing, and we're not trying to dismiss online. We're trying to create a more consistent experience between online and offline, which retailers have been looking at doing over the last 5 or 10 years. They just haven't focused on technology in the stores. It's been more about data aggregation. Now they need to come up with ways to personalize the experience in store, so that from an education standpoint, we don't really have to tell them, you need to do this. It's more, is this the right approach for them? Certain retailers don't have near the interest in improving the fitting room because fitting rooms are small components of that. We talked to one retailer who's more focused on shoes. This applies in the shoe world, and we've done some experiments with that, but it's not as much as if you're in the fitting room. It's a very easy prospect, and it's really starting to come onto retailers' radar. So I feel really good about the particular space, and the sales process is more why us and why we create scalability. Because the biggest pushback is that there's been two larger pushbacks over the last several years in this particular space. One, everyone wanted to build their own app. So everybody said, no, I don't want to use anybody else's technology. I want to do it all within my app. And we've had a couple retailers who are more established with their own apps. They still have under 1 million users of their app, but they still are really gung-ho on it. But looking at, let's go locally to the Keystone Fashion Mall. I downloaded 83 apps when I walked through that place and say, let me get every app that exists in this mall. I think I downloaded 83 was the number. That's really a bad customer experience to start if I'm having to bounce around on my phone for that. So that's been one pushback. The other is scalability. How we can't do this. If we got 11,000 fitting rooms and it costs me $3,000 per fitting room just to get this thing established, let alone ongoing costs, it's a non-starter for them. So where we've really built it out is how do you create a consumable way to try it out, pilot it, make sure that it returns the value, because it's a pretty easy value proposition. So if you can try it easily, you can do it at scale, and you can launch it more incrementally. That's how our business model is built out, is to allow someone to just dip their toe in the water, test it out. And that's why our partnership with a key alliance, the hardware manufacturer who manages the installs, the way that they power their devices, all of those things play to our ability to launch this without having a massive capital investment up front.
Love it. Are you guys open to talking about product roadmap?
Absolutely. Happy to do it. In fact, this is where I probably geek out the most, get into the product roadmap side.
Because there's a thing that you said in there that keyed me off, which then took me down this whole path of like, well, what could this product become, right? Which I'm sure you guys have some awesome ideas. So the specific thing you said was, how does a retailer bridge that in-store versus online experience? Which got me thinking about the data that you're potentially capturing around not just the in-store analytics of like, what are the physical products that are actually making it into fitting rooms, right? Which is baller just in and of itself, right? Yeah. Like you've got this thing on an end cap and nobody's picking it up and taking it into a fitting room.
Yeah, this is largely invisible data at this point. You know, what people are browsing for, what people are, picking around, like you said, into the rooms.
So that's really cool. But then you've got this other thing, which is do you know who the shopper is? Can you identify it? Because they're not using their phone, right? Like, so do you know who that shopper is?
Well, that does get into the roadmap conversation and some of the next steps.
Well, talk about that a little bit, because that is very exciting to me as well, around what you can even provide to the shopper for around brand loyalty, and where, if you like this at this store, you might like this other thing. Like, talk a little bit about that.
Exactly. So yeah, definitely on our roadmap, and we've already got prototypes of this, is, a consumer app. And that sort of begins, with the fitting experience that you can take with you. So there'll be a way that you can scan the device that you're interacting with in the fit experience and bring all those items to your personal device. You can, take a picture of yourself wearing it, share it with your friends, get their feedback and opinions. And then as you, again, start to shop around, as you mentioned, we can recognize that, hey, you're looking for this, pair of jeans that, maybe you didn't find them at the store you're in. We know all the other stores that have jeans like that, and we can alert you to those items being available. We can go so far as to allow you to create a wish list of what you might be shopping for and show you all the local places where you can get it, and customize that to, here's the best store to go to get as many items on your wish list as you want. Here's all the different stores to get the best prices that you want. We can take it lots of different directions. And I know Jason's been actually playing around with this past couple of days, even some additional ideas on it and how we can tweak that consumer experience to do more. So
what's really critical here is the Perfit experience to start can be used by an anonymous shopper. We want to eliminate barriers to usage.
Which is great.
Mm-hmm. But where we want to get this is to drive value for the shopper themselves as well. Obviously, higher conversions, a better experience is valuable to the retailer. But we want to create a value to the shopper as well, to encourage them, incent them effectively to download the consumer app. Because if you can download the consumer app, which we have in MVP stage right now, that is going to be where we see the long-term value. You mentioned it yourself. The data is unimaginable. Being able to identify who is in that fitting room by simply having them scan their phone up against the infrared scanner that's already in there, that functionality already exists, so that they can take the fitting room home with them. But it also introduces the next step that we're in the process of building, which is why we're actively looking for funding this time, because we want to really accelerate the roadmap. We want to take it so that when you are in the fitting room, you find that exact item that you like, you don't need to leave that fitting room to check out. So adding the checkout capability right there in the fitting room on your phone. Use Apple Pay, use Google Pay. We will not be collecting the funds because that's a barrier for the retailer. Instead, we can pass that directly through to the retailer's current point of sale system, assuming it supports that, and almost all of them do. We will be able to get that checkout right there, and then notify the associates, fitting room 2 is checked out. It's Casey, go bring a bag to them, go bring the security tag remover, and that way they don't have to go stand in line, potentially creating another barrier for them converting. So you're providing immediate value, you're creating an experience more akin to the online experience where in that instant they can complete the purchase and they're doing it directly on their mobile device. Obviously that's value to the consumer, but in doing that, they've now identified who they are in that fitting room. And you can see, here's all the items that they brought into the room. Here's all the items that they tried on but didn't purchase. Here's all the items that they purchased. Here's the items they requested. It starts to hone the recommendations that we're providing. You talk about perfect fit. That's the biggest challenge with online for fashion and apparel, the inability to know exactly how something fits. And there are companies that are focused and they're doing very well on trying to say, well, if you wear a medium in this, then in this brand, you're going to do that. We can take it to another step further of, you may like a particular brand. I have brands that I'm very loyal to, but there are only specific products in there that are perfect for me. And it's the aspects about that product. It's the sleeve length. I get very, very big on sleeve length. It's the weight of the material. It's the type of material. It's all of those aspects about the product, which we can get that information and we can start to create a massive understanding of what you as an individual are interested in to create that perfect fit. So it doesn't just happen in the fitting room. We can then say, when you're online, we know who you are. This is the exact fit or the exact set of products you want. So the ability to just utilize that data for the individual in the experience is amazing. But as Casey mentioned, it goes way beyond that. And this is where we started to prototype the ability to understand on the basic shopping list what's near you. And this is where we extend outside of fashion and apparel. Add your shopping list. And in our prototype, I think I've got the things that are on my current shopping list of, I need light bulbs, I need kids running shoes, I need, there's a specific brand, ASIC, for my son. So we need those. I need some shampoo that's only available in certain locations in the city. And then I think there's one more thing that's on there, an iPhone charger. I need to get a new iPhone charger. So in the prototype, it combs through all the local stores nearest to me to find which store has the device, each of the items that I'm looking for, so to speak. So it shows me, here's the nearest store for each item. As Casey said, it also has the ability in our prototype to say, here's the store with all of the items. So which is the closest store with all of them? Or if I'm going to the fashion mall, I can select a location and say, okay, what stores are there that have all these individual devices? Which then creates a very interesting prospect for the retailers themselves. In fact, we've gotten some feedback directly from some of the active conversations we're having of, they see this as a traffic driver for their stores. So it's not just about customer experience. It's the equivalent of Google ad placement in the brick and mortar.
Yeah.
The ability to just say, I hit the fashion mall, I pull up my shopping list, here's every store that has the ASIC Keanu running shoe that I use, and here's the price point for each of them. And so it's like ad placement, which opens an entirely new revenue stream and an entirely new set of conversation. But I'll stop there, I should say.
But also opens some challenges. So do I have your permission to ask some more challenging questions?
You are absolutely welcome to.
All right, because you're allowed to say no to that.
You're welcome.
All right. I guess the first one is a sales challenge, right? So if as you can imagine, if I'm the retailer and I know that you're potentially now showing somebody where they can get these shoes half a mile away for $2 less or $5 less, right? I'm not necessarily thrilled about that, right? Because now, one, you're driving margin out of because I got to be competitive with that, right? I have to be cost competitive. So you're driving margin out of a business where margins are already fairly tight, depending on the retailer, right? Could be fairly tight. And also, I think, depending on the product within the retailer, like some products, I'm sure, are way more profitable than others. So, I think that gets to one of your earlier statements of like, why are there 83 apps in the fashion mall? Because everybody is petrified of losing that customer loyalty and giving the data up to somebody else so you can snake a sale out from underneath them. So like, how do you, as you talk through that roadmap, that only makes me potentially as a retailer a little bit more nervous around, well, wait, if I'm not at the race to the bottom, where do I live?
I shared that exact concern when we were initially talking about where Perfit is going, where to begin. We pushed the consumer app off to the side because of that exact fear. I was taken aback over the last couple of weeks, even just due to conversations with some prospects that have said, "Nope, I don't care. I just want the visibility. I don't care if competitor XYZ shows up right alongside me. I just want the visibility to help drive the traffic." So this is some of the executives at a particular retailer who just flat did not care about that. And they even have their own app. And I said, "Well, what about your app?" And the exact response is, "I don't care. I am more interested in driving the traffic. That is far more valuable to me to get the opportunity to get that person in store as opposed to just trying to do it based upon loyal customers." So I shared your opinion, and I'm seeking further conversations to validate this with others. But initial feedback shocked me when that was the case. We assumed this would be a viable option when we have a massive adoption of the Perfit platform in general by the consumers.
Right.
Then we have the positioning in which we can say, "There's 30 million people that use this. You have no choice but to do it." But that wasn't the case at all. So I was shocked by that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think some of this may be the nature of the retail business. If you go on and do a Google search for a particular product, you're going to have the same type of a situation for a retailer. And even if you go back in time, Sunday morning comes, all the ads are coming to you at the same time for all the different retailers. They're going to show you similar products, probably at slightly different price points. So I think this has just always been part of the retail experience that different stores have different price points, and they can choose to be in front of the customers or they can choose not to, and that more differentiates the success factor than whether you're 50 cents cheaper maybe.
And let me add one more piece onto that. If your competitor is showing up on the list and you're not, you have no choice but to effectively get onto that. So there is sort of the idea, if they're doing it, I have to play along, keeping up with the Joneses in some respects for this.
I want to challenge maybe in a different way. You guys had mentioned on the roadmap, not today, you'd mentioned potentially point of sale integration, which many a startup has died on the hill of point of sale integration, as well as inventory management, which I think when you're in the more mature companies, like I can imagine a Kohl's or something like that, inventory management is probably fairly straightforward. And my guess is they probably know what they're doing, but I am well aware, having spent a little bit of time in the space, that there's a lot of retailers who don't necessarily have good real-time data for inventory and where it is and stuff like that. So talk a little bit about that, even in that. And I'm specifically even thinking about, like, I walk in there, I scan the 3 items that I brought in there, and your ability to even real-time show, like, is it up to date, these sizes, these things. Like, so I would love your thoughts on, like, either some of the challenges you've already faced in doing some of that, because I think you guys have already explored some of that, and what the strategy is going forward, maybe around how you're going to tackle some of those challenges down the road.
Let me answer point of sale real quick, because that's a quick conversation, and then I'll defer to you because you have a lot more experience with the inventory and product feed information. Point of sale, if we try to integrate with point of sale for all the different ones, we're going to spend all of our time doing implementation. Apple Pay and Google Pay, all you need to do is drop their particular API key as the target, and it's a consistent implementation for all of them. So in our initial launch of this, we're not trying to do credit card swipes or anything like that.
So you're just partnering with retailers who already support Apple Pay.
They are a target when we launch this function. So we've done a lot of research on that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Just keep it simple. Again, we want to take away barriers. When we become a multi-billion-dollar international company, let's talk about how we can integrate with everyone else. And we have a lot of experience integrating with e-commerce platforms, marketing clouds, everything. I don't want to tackle that problem right now. Let's focus where we can and keep it simple.
I love that answer.
Right. Yeah. And, like Jason said, we've got a lot of experience integrating through some of our past lives, integrating with retailers, getting their product feeds, getting their inventory information, getting all their pricing information, and keeping that up to date in order to market back to them. So, yeah, we have some experience around that. Won't go into any technical details on that, but.
And specifically when it comes to inventory management, we are aware that is going to be a challenge. Right. In initial targets, we are looking for those companies that do have more robust inventory management capabilities, APIs that provide us access to this. And fortunately, now that it's 2019, there are more companies that are having this. They've gone through massive product standardization, SKU standardization. So this does create opportunities for us to capitalize on those. But we've even looked at the go-to-market. If they don't have this, there are ways that you can manage this from a training aspect with the associate. If you're looking for a sweater in a medium in black and they only have the white, they can bring you the white one in the right size and say, we know this isn't the right color. Let me try this on, make sure it fits, and then we can just drop ship it or have it delivered to your home. So there are ways around that. And if there's only a limited set of data that we don't provide, that doesn't provide us the level of information that we want, there are ways to manage around that from an operational and execution standpoint.
Can we switch to some rapid fire questions?
Please.
It's getting close to time. All right. Do you guys formally track competitors in the space today?
Yes.
Do you have a way that you track them? Like, is it a spreadsheet, a CRM system? Is there some place you put that information?
We have a CRM system that we track competitors, we track prospects. We have all of that already set up. We track investors even with this.
Hot dang. Good for you. All right. I love that. Biggest thing, and this is for each of you individually, biggest thing you guys have learned in the last 6 to 12 months going down this journey, personally?
Really that there's a lot of crazy ideas out there that people are trying to solve this problem. Like I mentioned, the 360-degree view for lingerie was the most surprising thing that I could have imagined somebody would be doing.
For me, it's from an execution standpoint, having gone through fundraising and been part of small startups before, never leading a startup, it really gave me a different perspective on how much do you need to lean on sale of futures in order to get everything off the ground easier and faster. That's honestly the biggest, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but the biggest lesson learned for me is you've got to branch out from our historical backgrounds of customer service, which we both have that. And I need to lean more on the sales aspects that I've had and say, let's sell, get the customers involved. They can help guide this because a lot of the feedback surprised me and we've had to tweak a roadmap along the way. So getting the customer involved earlier and getting that customer signed up earlier would have been a huge, huge value add for us during the process.
Technology, not necessarily in the short term, but in the long term, new technology that in the long term you're most excited about. So think blockchain, augmented reality, insert whatever you want here. What has you guys jazzed about your future product roadmap and where you might be able to explore or play?
I don't know if it's necessarily a specific technology like that. We've got a lot that we're developing in our own platform. Obviously we're aware of all the augmented reality type things that people are trying to do in retail.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily on our roadmap at this point in time. And when we get to it in a couple of years, it's going to have changed and evolved. And, a lot of that is still shaking out. So we're not necessarily latching onto one particular thing, I wouldn't say.
And obviously there's the focus on AI and machine learning. There's a lot of opportunity for us because of the new set of data that we are basically bringing to a retailer that they've never seen. That is really, really interesting. And the ability to tie in with camera systems. We've talked to another startup that's focused on camera or facial tracking. They have no identity of the customer, but they've got facial recognition. Some of these technologies are going to really shape the future of retail, but it's an amalgamation of all of them, which is where it's really unique for me. But for us, the AI is going to be a very unique place once we start to drive even more. And I'd say the word is always statistically significant quantities of data. So it's pointless at the moment because we don't have sufficient data. Even one retailer, it takes a long time to aggregate enough data to make those models so compelling and so intelligent. But every piece of data we get, every time we add a new one, it just makes it a little bit more accurate and a little bit more interesting.
For each of you individually, thing that you are learning right now, and this does not have to be in any way related to the company, can be, that'd be great, but a thing that you're most excited about learning right now that you're in the middle of, like, reading, listening, playing, practicing, that has you jazzed?
I'd say, just constantly looking at the retail space and seeing what's going on. I was talking to somebody about the technology in our platform and, what some of the innovations are that we have in there. And they actually brought up that Starbucks recently applied for a patent to have drone delivery inside their stores. So you order a coffee, you go sit down, and a drone of some type will bring the coffee to you. So just constantly being aware of, what's going on in the space. And, like I mentioned before, there's just all these different innovations and experiments people are trying right now in stores. And so just keeping abreast of that is keeping me really engaged and excited.
Some ways that you stay current on that, like, are there particular news feeds or places that you go to, or podcasts, or anything that you get your daily diet of that stuff?
I don't have one particular place. There's a few people I follow on LinkedIn, and of course I look at, TechCrunch and things like that, but I wouldn't say any one particular spot.
Right on.
For me, it's really more on the investment side of the house, and really the funding side of the house. This is what's probably the biggest learning exercise for me, is what's the process involved? What are the key metrics that angels at their stage look for at the seed stage? Even though I've been part of the raises in the past, really being this upfront and leading it, it's really been a major learning exercise for me, and a very interesting one. So I'm spending a lot more time following some of the top investors, reading their LinkedIn, which I've always had LinkedIn, but I've never started my day with it. And that's how I now start my days. For 20, 30 minutes every single morning, I get up pretty early ahead of everyone, and I just grab my iPad and I start reading LinkedIn and just clicking through the stories. And most of I've tried to filter my list to show investors, angels, whether it's local, it's international, and just reading what are the key metrics, what are the successful companies doing, and that's really where my attention's been.
If you can rattle some off the top of your head, who are some of the folks that you follow that you find are maybe the most insightful or get you to think about it maybe in the most impactful way?
So right now, I'm reading a lot on Mark Lohr. He's probably the most active of all of them. My feed's pretty littered with him. He provides a lot of interesting information. A lot of it I can internalize and say, yes, it's applicable. Not all of it, but he's probably number one on my current list. There's really a myriad of others that I don't just follow one for otherwise, but he's the one that stands out the most.
Cool. I like it.
Even including the investment deck. That's probably where I like to post the most.
Thanks for sharing. All right. If folks want to get in touch with the two of you to learn more about Perfit, or to maybe have you guys come in and give them a demo, how do they do that?
Obviously, you can check out our website at Perfit.io.
Absolutely. Or email's really great. It's jason.fordham@Perfit.io, Fordham, just like the university.
Yep. Or casey.reagan@Perfit.io, CASEYREAGAN.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much. This is a blast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're thinking of launching a SaaS product, Startup Competitors can provide data on your closest competitors, survey potential users, or provide other product validation services. Learn more at startupcompetitors.com.